All right, buddy. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So I wanted to give you an example about how to do this track curriculum. And I thought I'd give you an example, a musical example, but you should be able to extrapolate how this would work for math. And hopefully this will also show you some of the benefits that you get from the track curriculum beyond just um, just organizing the scheduling of things. So um, these are the objectives that I have for learning. So I'll just describe this quickly. These are chords that I want to learn how to audiate or hear. So I do want to learn how to play them on the guitar, but these are all chords I can play on the guitar, but I want to make sure the sounds of the chords are burned into my ear, that I could sing them, that I could recognize them when I hear them in a song, that I can play them in my instrument, that I can compose with them. So this is the list of content that I want to learn. I don't actually know how long this is going to take. We're going to have to see. Now, um, if you look at this top section, everything is in the major, you know, whatever you want to call it, tonality or mode. And then everything on this bottom part, these are actually new scales and tonalities and modes that I want to learn to hear. So basically, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff here. And just kind of practicing all of this can lead to errors and confusion. And so I'll give you a really concrete example of why this is. So let's go down here for a sec. So say I'm learning to hear, if you look right here, these harmonic minor tonalities. Not a lot of people learn to play these. They're in film music, they're in video game music and everything. But because they're so novel, if I tried to learn how to hear like this Ukrainian Dorian scale and maybe just like a regular Dorian scale at the same time, or two of these new ones, it could cause confusion because there can be similarities between the two. I'll give you another example. If I learn how to play, the 5 of 2 and the 5 of 3 on the same day in the same lesson, because they're so similar to each other, there's a high chance for confusion. So one of the benefits to the track curriculum, like you could change, see where I have major secondary dominants, major chords, and tritone subs, you could substitute that with addition, subtraction, multiplication. Now, if you try to teach two addition rules at the same time, or like an addition and a subtraction rule at the same time, they can cause interference with each other. So what this allows you to do is not only plan the curriculum and see when you should teach it and how long you should teach it, but allows you to strategically place things that may have a high likelihood of being confusing. For example, in social studies, you might not want to teach two flags that have the color red, white, and blue at the same time. There's so many flags that have red, white, and blue. You might find that that's just confusing for students, like the French flag versus another flag that's very similar, or like flags that have like three colors that are all separated vertically might be difficult for students to see. And I mean, I'm not even a social studies teacher, and I can already start thinking of the ramifications of this just because it's so apparent in theory of instruction, like for what to look out for. So, for example, I might start today. Some of these are already things I can do. I just want to track them for thoroughness. So I might start today by maybe I'll work on this. Now, down here, if you look at this 5 of flat 7, this row right here, this is the same thing as this, but it's more complex. 2 5 of flat 7. So I can't actually learn this, or I shouldn't, until I know this top one. So that's an example of the kind of spacing that you'll see. You could possibly even put this under here. I'm just separating it for clarity's purpose. But the point here is it's almost always going to be better for me to do something like this. So I'll do maybe even one of these. I'm going to take this one out. I'm going to do this one. I'll learn to sing this scale, and then I'll learn to sing, this. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm trying to do one thing from each category because they are different enough that it most likely won't cause me confusion. I'm a decently advanced musician. For other people, these categories would have to be really different. Like, you couldn't have like 3 categories of chords like this. I'm advanced enough where this is different enough, but for you, this could be one one thing about addition, one thing about subtraction, one thing about multiplication, one thing about visual math, and you purposely don't teach two things from the same category on the same lesson, on the same day. And so let's say I do this, and I do it 3 times a day, and it works. I give myself an X if I've done it 3 times a day. Now, there's other days in between here, so I'm going to have to write like the 25th here, and then keep going. Now, once I get to the point that's a week later, I don't even know what this is, so it's going to be like March 2nd or something. I don't know the February math this year, where, I don't know where this lines up. But anyways, where this comes here, now in the system that I'm proposing, now on this day, it's appropriate for me to add another category here, and then another category here, and then another category, with the other one. But the problem here is that, like, what the hell am I going to be working on from, like, for all of these days? So what I started doing is I started doing stuff like this. Instead of having all of this on these columns, I think these are columns, what I'll do is I'll space these out like this. So let's say this one right here is really hard for me to do. I'm going to do 2 days of that. And then this I'm going to do for 2 days. And then now I'll take this one down here out, and I'll do this for 2 days. And there could even be some overlap here. I could, like here, for example, we could go like this. We could go, okay, there's 2 days of this. Now, when I'm doing my second review day on this, then I start a new thing down here. And then I'll review it again here. Now, when I'm on my second review day for this, then I come down here and add the other one. So generally, I mean, it's fine if you want to have 2 days. I've personally found from experimenting with this enough, once you start doing the week-long gaps, it just doesn't even matter. The second day is often not necessary, but you might find it is useful for your students and for yourself. And then what I do is, so let's just rebuild this again for a quick second. And I'm just going to keep adding things like this. Keep adding things. I'm going to try to be on the lookout for something that may cause confusion. So if like this one is similar to this one, I might want to space it out more. These are really different, so that can go there. And then I could probably put one of those there. Okay, now I'm at March 2nd. Now March 2nd, before I teach anything new, this is very important. This is like the most important thing of this whole thing. Before I add something new here, like one of these other ones, I need to do some kind of test. So not only have I tested each day right after I study this in my case, but in your case, your students, right here, you do another review session where you're basically testing them. And it's not a test for marks. You're not assessing this. This does not, this should not go towards the report card. This is not an actual test, like a midterm or a weekly test that goes towards marks. It's a test to see, do they actually understand what you taught them? If they do, you don't put an X there. That's fine. You put an R there. So this is a review. Now, it's important that you put something here to tell you that you've reviewed. Now, because the whole point we're separating these things is that if I tried to learn all of these in the same lesson or the same week, it's going to cause profound confusion. They're all so similar to each other. They're going to seem very, like, I'm not skilled enough. I mean, these I am, but some things are so similar to each other that it causes memory interference if you try to learn them at once. If you try to learn too many times tables at once, for example, it's going to cause confusion. So I put an R here, or Engelman puts a C here. It's called, he calls it cumulative review. So anything in this quadrant, I do not teach new things until I'm sure the old things are still mastered and retained, because there's no point. There's no point in adding more stuff. Now, and I'm talking about, like, this is a 30-second test to see if most of the people understand it. Now I add another one. And now the next one that I choose, I'm choosing one that's basically as different as this one as possible. I don't want to do, now this is hard to describe in music, but with math, like for example, you might want to, I'm trying to think of a good example. For example, if you're doing times tables, like 3 times tables and 9 times tables, like, the times tables basically from 1 to 12, you might not want to teach the 2 times tables and the 4 times tables right next to each other, because the 2 times tables and the 4 times tables have a lot of the same friggin' answers. Same with the 3 times tables and the 9 times tables. They have a lot of the same answers. There's overlap. So you might want to teach like the 2 times tables and the 5 times tables because they're radically different than each other. So that's the point of this, is it allows you to see this. But the cool thing is, like, you only have to plan enough to plan this and then this. I mean, I don't need to plan ahead. I don't have to have like months of planning done in ahead to figure out what's going to come next. Now, over the years of teaching, you might find that certain things are better to start with and certain things are better to follow up with. But that's just something you learn from doing this enough. Now let's say they did pass the test, or I passed the test and I still know it. Now I introduce this new thing right here. Then I do a review on the next day of the new thing. And then I follow down the same thing. So now a week after these, I start adding, I do another cumulative review. I put a C here. So now I've reviewed this content here. And I'm only going to put one C, and I'll show you how this works later on. But now I'm going to choose a new thing that's as different from this thing as possible. Now they are similar, so there's not much I can do. But now I'm going to add this. And a very important thing I didn't mention up here. When I do this now, I'm constantly reviewing this. This thing that has a C, it's constantly put in here. So like for this example of music, if I'm going to learn how to hear, 2 going to 5, and then 2 to 5 of 2, which it doesn't really matter if you know what that is or whatever right now. In a sense, I'm hearing D minor going to G, and then in this I'm hearing like E minor 7 flat 5 going to A7. The point here is that when I teach this new thing, I'm constantly seeing if they can discriminate between this thing and this thing. And so at first it's easy because it's like, well, I already knew that. He taught us that last week and it stands out. So, I might play a D minor chord and a G chord, or listen to a recording of that, and then hear a recording of E minor 7 flat 5 to A7. And can I actually hear the difference? I mean, that's the whole point. Can I play it? Can I hear it? Can I sing it? And then the benefit of this is, like, at first this discrimination is really easy to make. Now, once you go a week into the future, it's going to look something like this. There's going to be another cumulative review, and this thing is reviewed again. And then the new thing is here. Sorry, there should be an X here. And the new thing is like that. And now I'm basically asking them to interleave all these 3. So now when I get quizzed on this, once I've done basic learning on this new thing, now I'm quizzing them on all 3 of these at the same time. And so you can see how this just slowly builds up. And you can see what the problem is if you don't do this. Because if you try to teach all this stuff in 1 week or in 1 day, like for example, let me just delete this here. If instead of this I did something like this, like 4 in a day, and even if I teach them twice, and now I teach like 4 new ones, it's too hard for the students, and myself included, to make the discriminations. But if these things are spaced even by a day or 2, and so I might go like this, I might go like this, where this is spaced like this. Let's say this was a pretty easy discrimination to make, so I'll put it right next to it. Now I might have a day off where I'm not teaching anything new, and then I do 2 things, and then I have a day off. Now all the time, this is all reviewed. Every time there's a new thing, it's reviewed. So I need a review here. I don't need a review here, but you're still, mixing all this. You could put the C if you wanted to, but I mean, that's why this gets easier, is because this discrimination here, because there's such a time delay in how you introduce new things, by the time this thing is being requizzed over here, you're already so familiar with it that it stands out. It's easier to stand out. So that's basically how Engelman sets up his material. And so I just want to be very clear that this thing that I'm talking about, where you take like a week gap in here, this is my thing. This is not Engelman's, and he's not necessarily recommending that. Generally, Engelman would do something like this. We have an X here. You do 1 review session, and then the next one is a review, and then now you're introducing a new concept. Now this is like this, and then this is getting reviewed. Then maybe you have a day off of everything, so you have a day where you don't add any new stuff. Now you add a new one, and all this stuff's being reviewed. Now you'll get to a point where you can't review like 40 things in one day. So there's a system for this. You just review you review like the 2 most recent ones and the 2 hardest ones, and then like the 2 ones that students seem to get. There's rules for this. We'll get into this, but what I'm saying is that with the way that you do the weekly spacing, it's going to work out the same way that Engelmann's doing it, but the spacing will allow you to work on like everything all at once, which is, he does advocate that. And it would have been interesting to see his comments on what I'm recommending. But that's pretty much how you lay it out. And so you need a thorough idea of all the skills you're teaching. Now, I don't know if this is going to be realistic for you to do with every student. I mean, I don't think you should necessarily have one of these for every single student. I think what's better is probably have one of these for yourself, and then make sure like almost all of the class is understanding everything you teach. And then if there are students that have trouble with it, make notes that they are, like maybe make a separate sheet for students that need extra review for this. And that, by the way, that's also the case for having like 2 days in a row for you, is that you might need extra days for students who are sick or students that need extra support. But I mean, that's basically how you set this up. Now, what's crazy about Engelmann's program, and what I'm doing too, is that this is just letting you keep a bird's eye view of everything that you're doing. You might actually, like every one of these might have a small lesson plan built into it, like a script, essentially. So each one of these things only takes a few minutes to learn. So this is why, like, if you have a math period, you're able to do something from like from every single area all week, because you probably only need to be doing like a couple new math concepts a day plus review. And there's more rules for all this stuff. Like basically, for math and English and vocabulary and stuff like that, you should only be introducing 10% new vocabulary, new concepts every day. So everything at the start is very slow, and then later they can handle more introduction, more new concepts being taught. But it's a very slow rollout of everything. So I'm going to stop there and see what questions you have. But hopefully that gives you a better visual layout. It was fun for me to look at this because one of the reasons this is so useful, by the way, with the dates, is that you can kind of have a projected date for when you want to teach something, but you can push everything back if you need to. So like say for some reason I wanted to introduce this new topic, but when I did the review here on March 2nd, I found I didn't actually know this as well as I wanted to. Well, then I need more practice with it. So, I mean, that's fine. But that does happen. So it lets you plan like pretty well without having to like set things in stone, which is something that I very much like. You can, you could just put in breaks or days off here if you need to. But it's very visually easy to see like, oh, there was a week off since the last time I did this. I mean, especially if you go like this. So that's all the X's. It's not necessarily, he doesn't make, Engelmann did not make like sheets, one of these sheets for every single student. I think that would be probably a ridiculous amount of work to do. I'm not a group teacher, so I don't know how this would actually play out. But I have one of these for every student because my students' curriculums are all different. But you probably don't need to have one of these for every student. And I actually think that's one of the reasons why I've like been able to think of this, effectively, because I have to have different curriculums for students. I have different students at different levels. I mean, they're all basically in different grades. They're playing different instruments, so I have to do this. But with you, because you need to be delivering, basically the same lesson, you kind of need to have this for yourself to keep yourself on. I mean, Engelmann didn't have one of these for every student. So, yeah, that was fun. Hopefully that's useful. I'll check in with you and see if you have any questions. Toodaloo.